welcome to another edition of Reptile Fight Club. I am here with the one and only Chuck.
And I am here with Mr. Dr. Justin Julander.
I didn't go to 12 years of graduate school to be called Mr.
That's
How
right.
does that line go? 8 years. I guess it wasn't 12 years. That would be embarrassing. It was
I wouldn't say you really weren't. You really. Well, I wouldn't say you weren't a good doctor, but if you had to do 12 years, advice 8, you're really taking the long and expensive route,
including the undergraduate, right?
Yeah. There you go. Okay, I'm with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been a little while, I guess, since we recorded.
Yeah.
You seem a little tired.
I am tired.
Working hard.
Yeah, just a stressful day for the family, a stressful day for work, and we're in the holidays and we're getting ready for our we have big Navy inspections, so naval inspectors come in and inspect all of our programs, and so we're getting geared up for that, and we're a new program that's standing up, so it's always a struggle to get everything in place that wasn't in place. Gotcha. And so just busy. So
did you have a good Thanksgiving, you guys?
I did. Yeah, I had to work the Friday after Thanksgiving, so no, wild partying or anything. But but it is nice. I actually got a lot of stuff done because everyone else was on vacation. So it's you're not dealing with everybody putting out everybody else's fires. You can just kind of work on your own fire. So but yeah, it was good. Low key, just turkey dinner with the family. We played some video games post dinner, and I went to bed shortly after that. So
nice.
Yeah. How about you?
It was a little, it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. All the family was together. We played some games. We went to my parents for Thanksgiving Day, and Heidi was sick, so she didn't end up coming. My son Jake didn't come, so it was just me and the girls that went. And I got a cold. I was out of work for the week before, or the few days before Thanksgiving, and it's still kind of sticking around. My voice sounds a little off, but so sounds like I need to clear my throat the whole time. So that'll be fun for our listener. So what do you do? But still trying to kick that. I guess you got to specify that it's a non-COVID cold, because
there you go.
This day and age, right?
You got the Omicron.
Yeah, man, that's should be interesting, I guess. But
well, it's just the whole politics. This. Yeah. This has become a very political virus, and it sucks. Like, obviously South Africa just kind of blew the whistle on this, and it's in. It seems to be already in the United States. It's in California. It's in every major European city. So the idea that we were containing it from South Africa. I agree with the South African leader that said that they were being punished for being the ones who spoke up about it. And it really makes you wonder, like, how, if this virus this new strain supposedly has accrued something like 50 new mutations. And if that's the case, like, what, are we just not testing? Are we kind of like, ostrich head in the sanding this, and we're not testing at a level we should? And, and if it can mutate that much, that fast, is there even a point to, doing excessive testing that we just do kind of the best we can, and we, protocol and protect as best we can. And it's interesting.
I guess the plus side, it showed up, on the test. They discovered it, and it's known about and sequenced. Back in the day, you couldn't sequence a virus genome in a day or two.
Right.
These kind of things are a luxury of our time. It's in the speed at which science has worked to combat this virus and get a vaccine out, and it's just a miracle. I mean, it's
Yeah.
as fast as it's
Yeah.
ever been done. And I guess people have pause, and that's fair enough. But I mean, we've vaccinated what, 300 million people or
Yeah.
400 million doses or some crazy thing. I,
Yeah.
I think I think we know kind of the dangers of it
Yeah.
at this point. I mean, long-term effects, it's not going to be any worse than the virus. Guaranteed,
Right.
that.
Right.
You got one protein. Oh no, scary
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know. I've got a good friend who was my swim coach who's just goes off on the vaccine all the time, and I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, he's like, oh, they're hiding things, they're not sharing, and it's like, well, no, they publish the data on people who are harmed by the vaccine or potentially harmed by the vaccine, and it's like what, 0.001%
Yeah.
versus, a legitimate 2% chance of death with the
Yeah.
virus itself. So, I mean, you're straining at a gnat and swallowing an elephant, it's just
Sure.
kind of a silly thing, but
Well, I mean,
anyway, yeah,
you
you
can
could
get arrhythmia from too many energy drinks, like,
yeah,
I mean, like,
exactly.
I mean, I get that there is people have a concern about taking a virus, but it's a risk versus reward type of
Yeah.
question, right?
Well, and
And
it's
it's
not
a
even the virus.
statistical.
It's a
Right, it's a
piece of the
statistic,
virus,
right.
yeah.
It's a
Ah,
statistical, it's a statistical calculation, and a risk versus reward thing,
yeah,
and we do
yeah,
that all the time, every day, all the time. So just if
mm,
if you don't, and it's crazy too. Like going back to the politics of this, like we just went through a huge thing where everybody in federal government had to be vaccinated, and we had
yeah,
people who didn't want to get vaccinated. And I mean, I was having to have meetings and counsel people and talk to them and make sure they understood that they could get suspended or potentially lose their job over it. And then Biden's like,
mhm.
nope, we're not gonna suspend anybody, we're not gonna fire anybody. And it's like, I mean, not that I want people to get
Sure.
fired, but
But
it's
why
like,
even
why
say
why
anything if you're
threaten
not gonna
everybody? Yeah,
yeah,
why? It's just
exactly.
like I mean,
It's just
it
foolishness,
it
I don't know.
it kind of cuts at like how stupid the politics of all this is.
Yeah,
And it's like, and like, to your point, the science really is pretty good, and we're doing pretty good with the science end of it, but we're just mucking the freaking heck out of it on the political end of it.
yeah.
And it's like,
It's
can't
this is
get
the
can't get of our own way.
first time I've seen a virus be politicized, and I mean,
Yeah.
it bears out in the data, like
Hmm.
it's insane, and I I don't know, maybe more Republicans are skeptical about things naturally, and they distrust government things, and they see this as a government action somehow. I mean, it was a pharmaceutical company that made it, but anyway, it's I get it, but
Yeah,
we're kind of past that point, I think. And you need to look at the data and just say, okay, yeah. Anyway, we could go on about this all day. I'm
we
sure.
could.
I
We
get
could.
fired up about viruses. I mean, that's my day job, right? That's
Yeah.
uh, when you've got a PhD and 20 years of experience working with viruses and different model systems. Um, and then you have some internet jockey tell you that you're wrong, and that they know more about vaccination, and it just
Just warms the
it's
heart.
it's hilarious, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the same anywhere, you get
Yeah. Well, I
your
mean,
internet experts, they've had a bearded dragon for a day, and they're telling everybody
and you
what they
know
need
what,
to do.
dude? If you have a legitimate doctoral degree in something, and somebody who's on the internet can tell you all about some stuff that they know that you don't know, on a
Yeah.
field that you're an expert in, move on.
Yeah,
Move
yeah,
on. You're right. Go
not
for
worth
it,
my
dude.
time, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, but unfortunately, people are listening to those folks instead of the experts. I mean,
Well,
they're trying to
yeah,
drag
but
Fauci
every
through the mud and all that
and every
garbage, but
but and those people who have the the skeptical mindset and want to latch on to things that support their worldview, that's what they're going to do, and they were going to
yeah.
do that regardless anyway,
Yep,
you know what I
yep,
mean? So it's
yeah,
like, I mean, I get it, and it is super frustrating. It is super stupid, but
And when
you
it's
know,
20 or 30% of the population, that's when it's,
sure, sure.
when it's
Well, and
dangerous, frankly.
it's a
Yeah.
from where science and technology is we've come from to where it's taken us to where we're looks like we're headed. It is a pretty sad commentary,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And
you know,
even last time we talked about this subject on the podcast, I had somebody say, "Oh, you didn't have to get so political, on the podcast." It's like, this is not politics. This is
yeah.
science. People are going against science, and you usually expect reptile folks to be somewhat scientifically minded to some extent. But
Well, and I
anyway,
mean,
yeah.
dude, I don't, I mean, look, I guess my opinions on and the way I view life fall into the realm of politics because that's how we kind of parse,
Yeah.
our decision making out. So if I'm being political in that sense, sure, I would hope that I'm being common sense because I
Yeah.
can look at certain things that Republicans and Democrats say and go from what makes sense to me and what doesn't.
Sure. Yeah.
Certainly, both sides are off in crazy land in different ways.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
Definitely.
like if that is offensive and too political for people, I mean,
But
oh,
talking
oh
about a
okay,
virus infection and, and a pandemic, that to
sure,
me, that's virology. It's not
yeah.
politics.
Well, and
Maybe the
to
way it's being
but
handled
but
and,
people have
those kind of things.
politicians have politicized it and used it
Yeah.
as a talking point, and
Sure, sure.
it's it really started under kind of under Trump, and so Democrats took the opportunity to bash at him at how he handled it, and it's easy to poke at people when you're trying to contain a pandemic that the human race hasn't seen since probably 100 years, close to 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's like I mean, it, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. On
Anyway,
to on
moving on,
to
moving
better
on,
topic, yeah.
moving on.
Oh, dude, my, blackheads have been locking up, pretty regularly, and
Sweet,
I'm hoping for, something good in that department. That should be nice.
yeah,
Otherwise, things are looking pretty good. Bunch of my, Antaresia are already refusing food and sitting under their heat lamps. I don't know, maybe they'll be nice and early this year, we'll see. But yeah, it's, shaping up okay so far. See how it goes. How about you?
yeah. I thought it was I thought we were into, winter here, but no,
Yeah,
we're, back up into the 80s, and
yeah,
that's how it is out
yeah,
here, is like it cools off
sure.
and then it warms back up and it cools off and so like I just gotta, every year it does it to me and I'm like, oh yeah, why did I think when it cooled off it was gonna stay that way? And I have to remember that long into most of the country's winter, we're still experiencing, summer conditions out here. And so just,
Yeah,
keep, I'm just throwing those extra small meals,
yeah,
at the animals and I'll probably either taper off or cut off here, in the next week or so. So,
yeah.
yeah, just kind of doing the do. So,
Nice. Well, another milestone for me. All the natural history chapters are laid out with photos, so that's pretty exciting. I,
shut the front door.
yeah, I'd forgotten about Variegata chapter, the Darwin carpet chapter, and like I thought, oh, I'm all done, and then oh nope, I missed a chapter, and I looked in the first edition, and I think we had two in situ wild specimens, from the first edition, and now we've got, what, 15, 16 different
Yeah.
photos from wild specimens in their, natural habitat and stuff. So it's going to be, no, I don't think we have any captive animals in the natural history chapters except maybe one or two that like Carinata illustrating the
Yeah.
dentition, their teeth, um, gaping. And I just had some reasonable pictures of that from a captive animal. It was one of Terry's, at Reptile Gardens, that he
Nice.
got to gape for me for some nice photos. So, uh, but yeah, other than that, it's all wild animals. And I also did it where on the range maps, I've got the figure numbers, where the animal was
The animal
found.
sport. Yeah.
So I
That's
I
cool.
kind of like those kind of range maps. I think
Sure.
I stole that from the Barkers, and to stand on shoulders of giants. The Barkers are the giants in the field for sure. But yeah, so that's kind of a nice way to do it. But
Nice. Yeah, I
we're
agree.
gonna get
I
this thing
agree.
done. It's gonna be
It
done before too long here.
That's
So,
good.
and
That's
Nick
good.
is making a huge push. I mean, he's cracking the whip, and I'm cracking the whip. We're
I was gonna
cracking.
say, who's yeah, who
Yeah,
you guys are cracking
it's
whips on
going
each
both
other?
ways. Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and it's and it's making getting some steam behind it. I'm gonna send out the first chapters to Russ Gurley to lay out for Eco. So, um,
nice.
yeah, we're
You
making
gonna
some
do it a
good
couple
progress.
chapters at a time then?
I don't know. I'll probably send. So
See
the
how it
the natural history chapters, we've got 10 chapters,
Gotcha.
for the different species, subspecies that we've included in the book, and then an introduction. So that's as far as I've got it up to. And then Nick is kind of starting from the end of the book, so he's laying out the reproduction chapter and the morph section, which is already a behemoth. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a third of the book, man. There's so many different combos, and I've kind of lost track of morphs. Frankly, I don't pay much attention to that. My excitement's in the natural history and stuff, and I think Nick is as well, but he's got his finger on the pulse a lot more than I do as
Sure.
far as what carpet
I
morphs and out there
Yeah,
and
I
his
get I mean,
connections.
I guess I am just in the same kind of boat as you. I'm like, "Wait, there are?" Like, how I mean, I can think of
Yeah,
some, but, like, yeah, I mean, I guess when you start, mixing
and
and matching them and
yeah. I haven't really seen any of the photos either, so that's kind of I need to text Nick and have him put it on we've got it on a cloud system, the whole book, where the
Yeah.
first edition we didn't, and he did certain chapters, like the photo layouts for certain chapters. So, and then he had a computer crash, and so he lost all that information. And so
Oh,
luckily I
yeah.
had most of the chapters, close to final versions from the first edition on my laptop, and then or on my computer at work or whatever. And then I put all that on the cloud. So now we've got everything, all the photos, everything. So if I don't think we're going to be looking at a third edition, but I guess if that happens, then
Never say
we'll
never.
have yeah, we'll have everything kind of at our
Yeah.
fingertips to make that process a little easier. But I mean, this is a complete overhaul of the first edition.
Yeah.
It's going to be double, triple the size. It's going to be a behemoth, and
Yeah,
I'm
for
very
sure. I was
excited to
gonna
get it
say
done.
you
It's going to be cool.
you'll probably be able to knock somebody out with this book. Like, it's gonna be a big book.
Yeah, it'll be perfect for Reptile Fight Club fans.
Yeah,
They can
yeah.
fight with it.
When things go bad, we'll just start throwing the complete carpet at people. Take
Exactly.
that. Nice kingsnake.com shirt there. I like that.
Hey, yeah, going retro here.
Yeah, that's
I don't
cool.
even know if I've been on King Snake for how
I
long.
haven't I definitely haven't in
Yeah,
a while. Like,
it's been a while.
I yeah, I haven't I'm friends with Jeff on Facebook too, and I
Uh-huh.
don't even see him post that much anymore. So,
Yeah, I think
not that I pay as much attention on Facebook as I used to, but
yeah. I mean, I kinda miss the days of the forums and
I
all the
do. Yeah.
discussion boards and all that kinda stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, but those days are gone, I think. It
Bye
was nice.
bye.
Yeah, nice to have a record, to
Yeah.
to you don't have that with social media. It just goes
No,
away,
it doesn't. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
meant to go. I mean, if it were to stay, then people would go back and look at what other people had said. Now it's like we got to keep moving I mean, new content, new conversation,
yeah,
new. So you
yeah,
just need to keep everything churning. So I think a database history would just not benefit the way the platform really works. So.
yeah, for
Sucks,
sure.
man. Sucks.
Definitely.
It was nice to like be in a thread that was like starting to go crazy and you got to go sleep and then you
Yeah.
wake up the next day and you're like, "Oh my god." And you're
Yeah.
reading to catch up and you're just like, "Holy shit, this is
Yep.
nuts."
Things
It was
went
fun.
took a turn
Oh
overnight, but,
yeah, it was so
yeah,
fun.
those
So
were
fun.
fun days for sure, especially
Yeah.
when you're in the thick of it, typing
Yeah.
as fast as you could to get
Yep.
your response out there.
No doubt.
Mhm. Well, you ready to fight?
I suppose.
Okay, well, that didn't s I'm gonna
I
wipe the
mean,
floor with you if you got that attitude
well,
here. All right,
listen.
well, tonight we are, fighting about breeding as a benchmark for success in reptile keeping. So,
What does that mean? What does
yeah,
that mean? What does that
yeah,
mean?
let's flesh it out a little bit. So, to me, that means, if, there's the attitude or that concept of if my animal's breeding, then I'm doing the best I can with my husbandry, or that's kind of the gold standard of if you're keeping your animals successfully is if they'll breed. And so
Mhm.
we're gonna debate the pro and con of that, the take one side or the other on that issue.
Okay.
So, yep. All right, you ready to lose? I mean, you ready to do a coin toss?
Wow!
Coming out swinging here.
Yeah.
Okay, give it a call.
Heads.
It is tails. Well,
That's
not a
alright.
big
I don't have
surprise.
Frank on here this week,
Yeah,
so I don't
yeah.
care if I
I
lose.
think the
So I all right. I just want to real quick before we get into it.
yeah,
I was, got the privilege to fight Frank the last time,
yeah,
last show, and I was trying to make a point. I went back and listened to it, and I'm a pretty big Frank Payne fan, so
yeah.
it was pretty awesome to get to fight him,
That was
and
a good show. It was
yeah,
fun to have him on.
I went back and listened, and I really thought I had made this point, but I was talking with him about, having a hard time discerning things off of the internet because of different interests that people have lane, and I started talking about technologies, and I didn't drive home the point of when people bring new technologies, they have a vested interest in selling that technology so they can get that part of their, part of the new economy and make money off of it. And so, the
Mhm.
idea that you have to kind of be careful with anything that people are selling, and I kind of touched on lighting as an example, as people will tell you, oh, this light is great, or this is the new thing because it's a new technology, and you have to kind of be discerning about that. And I think I went on to say something about how, new technologies are always good and that we have them, but I don't think I really brought home the point that what I was trying to say was that you have to be very careful, because there's a lot of interests that different interests that people have when you're talking about things. And if somebody comes out with, oh, this light is the best because, whatever they're saying, you kind of
Yeah.
have to you kind of have
Take it
to
with a grain of salt.
yeah, and or kind of realize that maybe other people have interests that lie beyond just giving you, the light you need for your gecko or for your whatever you're doing,
Yep.
as the best thing for you to do. I mean, they may believe that, but they're also trying to sell their product, or they're trying to, or they're trying to get you to buy into something that they believe is right, which may not necessarily be the case. It maybe worked for them, or they
Yeah.
haven't seen any ill effects of it, but it doesn't mean that it's right. So, and I think Frank even touched on that a little, where he said he was criticized for some of the lighting he uses.
Mhm.
But I mean, you'd be hard pressed to criticize Frank's success using the lights that he uses with
Yeah.
how well he's
Yeah.
done. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back and kind of,
Make that point.
solidify that point, because when I heard it, I was like, I knew what I meant to say, but that is not what came out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, well, no,
sorry,
that's a great point.
sorry,
No,
folks.
I that's, that is an important thing to consider because I like to see the data, if
Hmm.
there's so much out there that's, folklore herpetology where, they somebody did it once and they had success, and so that became what everybody did just because that was part of the formula for success. Whether or not, it could be scooping snow into a cage, it may have no
Hmm.
effect at all, but because they did it, it's like maybe akin to like a sports, when your sports team, oh, I wore this shirt, I didn't wash it, and my team won, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm going to wear that shirt every game, and oh, they won
Sure.
again, so it must be the shirt. We do
Yeah.
that
You
in
see basketball players
herpetoculture.
do. they do like
Yep,
their free throw pre-shot
yep,
thing
they
where
got
they
a whole
like do the same thing
routine.
every time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel kind of the same way, and I do think that like the new technologies are good. I just
Yeah. We wanna push it forward.
you just you know
But you need a
it's
readout. You
yeah,
need some data. You
yeah,
need to show that
absolutely.
what you're getting it is what they're purporting it to be, and
And
that's
I think
hard sometimes with
it
reptiles, you know?
it definitely goes along with what I was trying to impart is you know when we were talking about not just relying on the care sheet
Mhm.
let it get you started, and guys like
Yeah.
Frank and the information that they give are absolutely critical, but
Oh, yeah.
like always think beyond that. So when you're looking at lighting, think not just about the lighting, think about the data, think about the interest of the person who's telling you what why you should get this, or why that because you know there are people who make their living you know selling products, and that's a
Yeah.
relevant reason to kind of say, okay, am I making the best decision right now? Can you
Mhm.
show me some more data on this, or can I whatever. But I've just I'm on a day gecko forum
Kick.
on Facebook,
Oh.
and yeah, I'm definitely on a day gecko kick. But
Yeah.
I just some of the advice that's given there isn't the advice I would give, and I
Mhm.
just I hate to jump on there and be like, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know where that person lives. Like I can't see in
Yeah.
their profile where they live. I don't know
Sure.
what their situation is, and they
Yeah.
don't list that. But people are just telling them all these different, and you know, I would
That's
not
tricky.
put
Yeah.
I would not put day
That's what
geckos on ceramic heat emitters, but people
that's
were like,
that's
"Oh
what,
yeah, that's great." Like, I don't know, man.
that's what private messaging is for. You can
I,
maybe send them a message and clue
I,
'em
I,
in maybe.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree there.
Yeah.
So,
All
moving
right.
on,
Well,
sorry.
you feel good about that delivery now? You okay?
I mean, I
Yeah.
feel better that I've set my record straight a little bit.
All
My
right.
record was skip, 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 skipping, um, when I tried to make that point, so
Well, let us get to
alright,
the topic
so
again. So,
you win
yep.
again.
Again,
You choose what?
I don't know. I haven't really I could go either way on this one, I think.
Well, pick
Maybe
away.
I will go that it is a benchmark. I'll go
That
on
it
that
is a
side.
benchmark.
Sure,
Okay,
that it's a
okay.
benchmark. Um, and I will
I like
defer
that you
to
win the coin tosses, but you take maybe the the side that I think you're probably least
likely to
true
take.
to what you think. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you've discovered my plan. I mean, I don't know. I like to consider the
You
other
like to
side.
argue this. You're like my
Yeah.
grandfather. You like
I
to
just
argue the
it's
stake for the sake of the
devil's
challenge.
advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
just to
He's
challenge
like, he'll
myself.
take the worst position just so he can argue it. Like he loves that stuff. It's so
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, that's I enjoy that as well. So,
Ah, that's good.
just don't confuse me for your grandpa. That's
He's like 97 World War II
alright,
veteran,
yeah.
sold American steel after the war. Like
Uh,
he's the salt of
true
the earth.
blue.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's the salt of the
good
earth
man.
of the greatest generation. Like that
That's
man is
awesome.
he's an ass kicker, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I should aspire to be so good. So, well,
We should all aspire to be so
yeah,
good.
yeah, I agree. Well, I'll defer to you. You can go
Okay.
ahead and lead us off. Tell us why
S-
breeding isn't a benchmark.
Well, I mean, I think easy and obvious is that the primary drive of all animals is to reproduce. That's the most you know basic of functions in an animal and a plant is to carry its progeny on to continue to survive, and I think so. Wow, it's not always the easiest to get something to breed in conditions that are not suitable, especially reptiles, where they maybe have eggs or have to, have a gestation period, which is tied thermally to and moisture wise to their outside environment. So they're definitely coupled to the climate that they're in, and have to make decisions around that. I think their primary drive is going to be to reproduce, and if they think they can do it, they will. I think that's probably how I'd start off. I'll let you respond. But yeah, I think they're, going for the gusto is every animal's, you know, primary drive. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
would, probably say it might depend on the species or the group, the family, whatever, way you wanna
Like
break
like
it down.
like we don't want to say that with the dodo bird, or what? What do you mean by that?
Like, pandas, they seem to be hard pressed to preserve their, genetics and seem like they're,
Maybe you
on their
maybe
way out or
may,
something.
maybe the Chinese zoos and the San Diego Zoo, they're just not set in the right mood. You know what I mean? You know
Yeah,
what I'm
I
saying?
mean, there's
Maybe
a
it takes
there's a lot of factors that go in, yeah. I mean, but I agree. I mean,
sure.
obviously things need to push their, genetic information on. And, I guess what I'm saying is, eh, like an insect versus an elephant, they have very different reproductive strategies, humans versus, rodents. The rodents are just gonna pump out
Mhm.
babies as fast as they can because most of them are gonna be food for raptors or snakes or whatever. And humans are have huge amounts of parental care and even for their 30-year-old son living in the basement or something, that kind of thing. So I think when you're compare you got to kind of compare apples to apples. So like if you've got a chameleon, yeah, chameleons are like the insects of the reptile world, so they want to get their get to size as quickly as possible, to lay as many eggs as possible, to reproduce as quickly as possible. So if you don't support that, they're going to breed themselves into death, right? The females will usually die egg bound if they're not bred early enough and rapidly enough, and their condition isn't supported to be able to reproduce. Then they're probably going to burn out and crash. And so, I mean, the act of copulating or the act of egg laying is maybe not what I'm referring to when I say breeding is a benchmark. What maybe I would specify that as is continued successful breeding over
Mm.
generations would be my benchmark for success. And so,
I'm glad you made
you're
that distinction.
yeah. You're a great example. I mean, people get stuff in, imported in all the time that's gravid, and they go, "Oh, this, my animal had babies or laid eggs or whatever." They didn't do anything to do that. The animals came in that way, already knocked up or ready to lay eggs or have babies. And so, that's there's different levels of reproductive success. Just getting a clutch of eggs on the ground does not necessarily mean you've supported the animals well enough to breed over generations, over
Mhm.
successive years, similar to what we're seeing with Tracy, where you're the only one so far as I know that's bred them multiple years in a row, right? 2 years in a row. And,
Far as I
even
know.
that, I mean, 2 years in a row isn't like that's not like we can mission accomplished, put up the mission accomplished banner, and
Definitely
say,
not.
and I don't think you feel that way. I think you feel
No.
like I still need to, put some work into it and figure
If
things
I
out.
if I
So
can do if I can three-peat,
yeah,
with a
yeah.
year off, like,
Uh-huh.
if I can three-peat with a year off making changes, then I'll feel like, okay, like,
Yeah. Yep. And I
then
mean, you
maybe
gave your
there was
animals the
some
year
insights.
off, and yeah, so you're direct, and that's the thing with herpetoculture is we're directing their reproductive output to some extent. We can dictate whether or not they're going to be paired up or whether or not they're going to breed with this or that or the other. And so,
Well, and
there's
I
a
think
lot of
we
mm,
also inhibit their reproductive output because we
mhm,
make decisions like that as well. So I think
yeah,
that's a huge distinction, um,
yep.
that
And that's my
and
point. I
potentially a
mean,
negative.
what we do in herpetoculture often, you know, inhibits successful reproduction, especially, with the larger pythons. I mean, sometimes, for example, the ball pythons, we didn't figure that out for a while. And then once we kind of figured out what was going on, or at least got captive bred offspring to work with, that was kind of a big step in the right direction. And now they're almost to the point of being domesticated, where, if you can't reproduce a ball python, there might be something wrong with you. But I
Yeah.
do think that you can mess up a ball python and you can not
Sure.
get your animals to breed. And that's almost as likely. And so there is that benchmark of, if you can reproduce a ball python, you're doing something right. And if you can't, then you're probably doing something wrong. or,
Well, I
or
mean, I guess so. Couple things going back to
Mhm.
your panda analogy. I
Yeah,
mean, they seem to be able to keep pandas alive in captivity long term, and
sure, sure.
don't have an issue there. But they do seem to have an issue, with reproduction, and
Mhm.
what that reason is, and they're. I'll be frank and just say I don't know the natural history of pandas in the wild, and obviously
Yeah,
a lot of the reasons why their numbers are so low, and what that is. I would expect is probably habitat related, and things like that. But
mhm.
um, so I see it that way. I see like where you know we do, and ball pythons are a good example too. I mean, most people can keep a ball python alive for the long term because they actually do fairly well at regulating themselves. They're, unless you just aren't offering them water and they dehydrate themselves and die, or you cook them because you didn't use the thermostat, or you do something that's gross, that bona fides gross negligence. But I mean, if you try to overfeed them, they'll just stop eating on you, when and they'll does that mean that they won't still overeat eventually? Yeah, sure. But I think they have some basic biology built into them that kind of keeps them from doing that, and they'll live. You can not do super great and still do fairly well, and most people have bred their ball python on accident, right? So you know
Yeah,
I think, like a lot of the things we talk about, the devil is in the details of the example, right? And so
sure.
you
Yeah,
know if you're talking about a ball python, maybe that's maybe not the best example for us, as far as like reproduction being the benchmark for um doing everything right with husbandry. But certainly I do agree with you that they're at some level overly stressed out and just not well taken care of. Not animals that are not getting their needs met don't reproduce. And oh, by the way, they don't tend to live very long either, because they're just not highly stressed out animals. Just like highly stressed out humans are prone to disease and other, it's just how our bodies are built. And I think when you don't meet an animal's needs, when it's stressed out, when it's having a hard time all the time, yeah, you're probably not gonna have success breeding it. And yes, it's probably gonna live a shorter life. And I think Tracy are a good example of that.
oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're punching for me here. You're making my points for me. I
Okay,
appreciate
Mr.
that.
Ball Python and
Yeah.
Panda, keep
I
going.
mean, I
Jesus.
think pythons are definitely a great example of, if you're on the right track and you're doing things well, you're probably going to have success. And so you
Sure,
can use reproduction as a benchmark for pythons. Um, Other animals, I mean, things like I said, like chameleons, that's a whole different ball of wax, and
sure.
they will breed themselves into death, and so they might not be the most uh, apt example of, if you're breeding them, you're doing things right, because
Well,
things can go wrong pretty quick.
and going with our Frank Payne gecko theme,
Mhm,
the blue day geckos, they're highly
mhm.
prolific. But if you do not support those females, right, like Frank was saying, with the calcium, and just giving them a proper diet, and meeting all of their lighting needs and things like that, they crash, and the females will die, or you will get very sporadic egg production. And when the babies are born, a lot of times they'll crash and die. So I definitely think, um, reproduction in certain animals, like chameleons, like electric blue day geckos, is definitely not just tied to, just because you can reproduce it doesn't mean you're doing it right. I mean, I think there are hardy species that hide that pretty well. But when they aren't supported right, they just absolutely crash for it.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for an example of what species might not be, use reproduction as a benchmark of success in herpetoculture. You have any ideas on that, or you just gonna
Well,
argue
so
my point all
I
day?
mean, so well,
Uh,
okay,
I've got
listen.
you on the ropes, don't I?
Yeah, I'm
You're
totally on the ropes. So it's kind of stupid, because you're like, yeah, if it can't reproduce itself, it's still successful. Well, yeah, anything you can keep alive long term is success, right?
No, well, I'm saying these things, if they're
Like if
breeding and
it's
you're
like,
breed
I'm not going to reproduce, but I'm successful. What I don't like. What's my argument there? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like.
Well,
Uh,
okay, I'll throw it. I guess I
Maybe
did
I'm not
totally wrong,
understanding
yeah.
this, but like, I mean, I think that um, again, it depends on which example we're talking about.
Yeah,
But there's certain, like you were saying, that you clarified your point to reproduction long term being a benchmark for successfully keeping an animal. Well, yeah, totally, man. If you can keep it alive and keep it breeding long term, that's like pretty much the whole kebab of what we're talking about, long term success, right? So the
yeah.
opposite, what's my argument on the opposite end of that? Yeah, if you can just fuck it off, never reproduce it, and it stays alive, like, that's good. Well,
Well, I mean,
I don't.
like rodent breeding, you can have success. They'll breed, but you may not be, doing the best job you can, right? You might have some kind of vitamin deficiency because of the food you're using, or and so you'll get like I don't know. For example, I had a colony of rodents, and I was buying this special rodent pellet made by my local farm and feed store, and they were reproducing, and then the store ran out of that rodent pellet, and so I had to resort to another food. And I think I just got some dog food, right, and started
Mhm.
feeding them dog food. Their reproduction just skyrocketed, like it just went off. They started producing a lot better, a lot more pups per litter. They were weaning them, weaning more. And, I was keeping pretty good records back then. And I saw a huge change in my rodent production based on the food I was using. And so, I mean, yeah, they were breeding, but I wouldn't say I was being very successful. I wouldn't say that I had it,
So
keyed in.
what you're saying is that the environmental factors, such as the food you were feeding them, the way you were keeping them, mattered more to production than, you know them reproducing. Like, so I mean, I guess to me that's a different argument, isn't it? Like, then you're
Well,
talking
I mean,
about.
you're saying you're breeding them, but are you
Yeah.
successful?
But you
Is that the best
but what the
benchmark?
argument was,
Yeah,
is breeding a benchmark for long-term success, or
yeah,
success with a
yeah,
species. And
and I
w- and so your rodents were breeding, they just weren't breeding as good, and you changed
yeah.
something. and now they're breeding better. So I think that that goes to, what I was saying is that every animal's primary drive is reproduction, but how you support that animal, giving the electric blade, excuse me, the electric blue day gecko calcium to help support production and have healthier babies, or giving a dog food to a rodent rather than a pelletized whatever you were getting from your tack and feed to increase production. Those are all things that you clearly made alterations in how you did things, which led you to more successful breeding. Now, taking that, is it was it the switching of the food that made them breed at more longer term, or was it the switching of the food that increased their output? Like, and how long did they last? Did they burn out quicker? Did they? So, I mean, obviously rodents have, a much shorter life than a lot of reptiles do, and so you kind of, especially with feeders, you have to, have animals behind them that so when they burn out, that you kind of keep your breeding stock fresh. So mice are probably a pretty decent example of how you can look at long-term success, as far as output for breeding. um, but I'm not sure that just breeding them is necessarily um, a benchmark for success, right? Because I know when I used to breed rodents, and you and I have talked about this, that I didn't have them in an air conditioned room, and so in the summer when it would get warm, and I guarantee anybody out there who breeds rodents is going to be like, "Yep, I know what you're talking about. They just shut down," and you lose that production. But if you're able to climate control and you're able to keep them in a stable, cooler temperature,
Yeah.
a room temperature, that they just absolutely won't stop, and you can just not miss a beat. So, I
Yeah.
think it, that's kind of an example of when you don't meet their needs, then production stops. And so is that deleterious to their long term? Well, yeah, I would say if you're stressing them out, and you're causing them to shut down breeding, then it's it's what you're it's those factors that you're not supporting with that will long term not make you successful. So,
I guess that's what I'm looking for you from you is like examples of how breeding isn't a benchmark for success, so we can kind of define the difference between, okay, this breeding or this
well, I
output
mean,
is
so
successful. I mean, so yeah, you get an imported ball python and it drops a clutch of eggs. Are you supporting that animal successfully, or did it breed before it left Africa and dropped eggs on your cage floor? Those kind of things, like that's an example of where breeding wouldn't be a benchmark for success. And so I'm saying my side is trying to figure out which examples are benchmarks of success. And so I the first one I led with was multiple generations, successful breeding and successive years like your Tracy A,
what
things like
happens
that.
when you raise up a pair of snakes and you get them to breed, and the female slugs out every year that she
Yeah.
breeds, and you can't figure out why?
Uh-huh. Then your reproduction is a benchmark of success. You're failing with those animals, right?
Right, but
You're not
why?
having success
I
because you're
mean,
getting slugs. And
I
so
mean,
you can say, I got to figure out what's going on with these animals so I can be successful, because right now I'm not having success. And success being
okay.
reproducing producing offspring.
So let's say you have animals that you don't have a pair of animals and they don't come in contact with each other. There's obviously plenty of people out there like that. How are they measuring their success long term? Like if they're not breeding their animals, the idea is that
Yeah.
breeding is the long term success, right? Right? If it breeds,
It
then you're
can be. Yeah,
long-term
it can
successful,
be.
right? Like is so
Yeah.
is breeding a benchmark of success? Sure. Sure, if you can reproduce
It
something,
can be.
that's
Yeah.
that's that's a successful thing. Yes, I agree with that
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah.
Is that the benchmark? No, absolutely not. Because you have people who can breed stuff. It gets egg bound, and it dies. You get animals
Yeah.
that you see them cycle. You watch it go through, and they never end up breeding for you. You get animals that are together, and they just never do shit. You know what I'm saying? So there's all these iterations that are tied to reproductive challenges in
Yeah.
animals. And if you were to just look at saying like, well, it producing reproducing itself is the benchmark for me being successful with this. Well, maybe if your benchmark is reproducing the animal and you're a breeder, then yes, you're failing at that. But if your benchmark is keeping the animal alive long term, like the 21 2-year old coastals I have outside, then I don't look at the benchmark being as of reproduction as being the goal. Now, if they still breed at that age, hey man, that's great. But you know what got them to 20 years old wasn't because they bred. That's not the benchmark to old
Yeah.
age.
I mean, you can I guess longevity, I've always had an issue with that because you can kind of like I don't know, it's always like monitors, people would be bragging about having monitors live for 15, 20 years, but they were keeping them at suboptimal temperatures. They weren't behaving like monitors. They were kind of being preserved, at a lower temperature. They weren't very active. They were kind of sluggish. They'd eat, but and they'd live a long time, but were they really doing what a monitor should do?
Well,
And
isn't that
and
kind of
what
subjective? Don't you feel like now
well,
you're speaking for all monitors,
I would
and
I would
how.
compare it to what a wild monitor does. A wild monitor doesn't just sit there, when
Well, sure, but
it
you have
puffs
no
up and tail
idea.
whips,
I
but
I
it's
get
also
that, but
laying eggs and
you
it's
don't know
reproducing
the
itself.
yeah, okay.
So if you have longevity as your benchmark, I don't think that's the best benchmark for success versus if you're able to breed a monitor in captivity and support it to get eggs and to have them, lay multiple clutches even in a single year, you're probably doing okay with your husbandry. I think that's a reasonable benchmark to say I'm supporting these animals.
Well,
Um,
until you're not.
yeah.
I mean,
So, give me an
you can be
example.
going you can be go okay, you can be going along just fine, and for whatever unknown reason, your animal just drops dead. But you've reproduced it several years in a row, and then one year you go to go breed it, and it just dies.
Well, maybe that's
Is
what
that
they do in the wild. Maybe that's how they're supposed to work. I mean, that's what chameleons do, right? They
s-
breed they breed
but
intensively for 2 or 3
okay.
years and then they die.
Okay, but that
So if you do that in captivity,
is the benchmark for long term or for success reproduction if they breed a couple times and then die in the wild too? Like
if it
I'm
matches
trying
their
to.
natural history, then I would say definitely yes. I mean,
Okay, so
if
wait,
you
so which
produce 4
so
clutches of chameleons and then your female dies, that's probably what,
if their life trajectory follows the natural order of what whatever the wild version of them is doing, that's a measure of success, not
is
captive reproduction. Or is that
is
what you're
not
saying?
well, yeah, is not I mean, millions of years of evolution that's brought them to this point, isn't that the ultimate benchmark of success is
Oh,
if
I
you
don't
can
disagree with you,
get
but
them
what we're
to
talking about
replicate
is
what they're
taking
doing in the
animals
wild?
out of the wild,
Yeah,
keeping them in our house, and then trying to figure out what the measure that makes you successful doing that is. And what you're saying is it's reproduction at first, and now you're saying, well, if you can keep it and it behaves and does just what it does in the wild, then that's what success is. Is it
in regards
behaving
to
like it does in the
reproduction, yeah.
wild, or is it reproduction in captivity?
Well, I mean, if you're modeling the reproductive successes of wild animals, then you have a pretty good benchmark for success there, I would say. If what a female chameleon does is lay 200 eggs and live 2 years in the wild, so you bring it into captivity and you keep it alive for 4 years, but it never reproduces, are you successful?
Well,
Maybe,
I
I don't
mean,
know. I
you know, to the point here, it's about the goal, right?
yeah,
If you're a breeder, then yes, I would say, you know, not being able to reproduce something that you have probably is, you're going to look at that as not being successful. If you're just a
sure.
keeper and you can just keep it alive and you're not trying to breed it, like, maybe if you breed it on accident, you're like, oh wow, I'm so successful with this, but that's not your goal. That's not
No, I'm
the point.
I'm
Now,
not talking about like a single
but
animal, like, a
I
male.
understand, but
Yeah,
well,
you
but
keep it.
yeah, but this whole thing is very like, you know, you true to your form. It's very example specific, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is it depends on the species, it depends on the family, it depends on these things to say this is a benchmark
So
or this
rather
is what
than
the
to say
benchmark
that
is.
reproduction is a is the benchmark for success, what you're saying is it depends. Is that
Sure.
what I'm
Yeah.
getting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with that. I agree with that. Because I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more that goes into success, because you can reproduce something and not do it long term, i.e., if I just reproduced Tracier twice and I never do it again, I would not consider myself successful with those animals.
Mhm.
I had success, but I wasn't successful, right?
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
success and being successful are different, because having
Yeah.
success is doing something once or twice. Being successful is being able to do it over and over and over again, right?
Yeah. 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 In science, we call that repeatability, right? So if
Absolutely.
you've got to
Yeah.
figure it out and so that's yeah, that's what I'm saying is your benchmark for success is that reproductive output. Yeah, I'm not saying you can't have other benchmarks for success, but in regards to, keeping reptiles, that's probably the most common benchmark that's used. And I'll say that's probably a reasonable benchmark to have. It's if I can reproduce this successfully and do it,
Well, I
over
think with
several
reptiles it's
generations or
tough
several
because
years. Hmm.
I think with reptiles it's tough because you know, they don't display a lot, you know, not all reptiles display a lot of outward behaviors. So, you know, studying them the way we study mammal behavior is a little bit different. It's hard because they hide disease, they hide, you know, pain, they hide it's very tough to get a read on that than it is with mammals. So we look to things like reproduction as benchmarks, and I think, yes, you know, obviously, if something reproduces, that's a successful event. Reproduction in any organism is a major um, primary accomplishment function.
Mhm.
However, you know, like you said, you're going with the idea that long-term breeding success is the measure. And I think that is absolutely the very key phrase, because if you don't say long-term, then it, yeah, absolutely, it's not a measure of success. And I would say that long term anything successful, long term keeping something alive, long term study of its natural behaviors, long term, you know, cohabitation strategies, I don't know, pick,
Yeah.
but long
Yeah.
term anything makes you successful, right? Isn't that like the more you can do it, the more longevity you have in being a virologist, being a reptile breeder, being a podcast host, the more it makes you successful, right?
Yep.
So while
Yeah.
I do agree with you that reproduction is one of the major benchmarks with reptiles for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned, I don't necessarily think it's the only one. It just depends on what perspective you're coming from or what your goals are
Yeah.
around it.
I mean, yeah, I'd agree with that. And I guess, based on that initial comment of, reproductive output is the biggest driving factor in nature to some extent. If you're
Yeah,
not reproducing your genes, you're failing in nature, right? So,
sure.
um, you and I are proven males. We have offspring, and well, but I guess um, having offspring maybe not all the measure of success, and there's plenty of people that are
Thank you, because I feel
successful
like you
that,
just
that don't
treated
have
me like a
offspring.
piece of meat right there.
Yeah.
Proven
So
male.
that's that was my favorite when, I think it was Owen when they were I can't remember, maybe Vin Russo or somebody was the guest, and he's like, "Oh, you're an unproven male, Owen." So
Yeah.
that's kinda funny.
Oh,
But,
man.
we put a lot of, emphasis on that, and, maybe it's misplaced in a lot of cases, and I
Well, I
think,
think as reptile
people.
breeders, it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, you
I
better be
mean,
producing
yeah,
reptiles if you're a breeder, especially if you're a
yeah,
full-time reptile breeder, but, so yeah, that's an easy benchmark of success. But I think about shingleback skinks a lot. When I was in Australia, I saw a lot of shinglebacks and a lot that had gotten hit by cars. There was one stretch of road where I counted, I think, like 30 or 50 within a kilometer. It
So
was
maybe the
ridiculous.
success of
So many.
some reptiles is just staying off of the goddamn road.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not very successful if you're squished. But I
Yeah,
I guess the point being is in keeping them in captivity. I mean, it's probably the worst investment project, if you want to use that ridiculous term, in reptile keeping, is probably a shingleback, because they cost so much and their reproductive output is so low. But in nature, I mean, there's no shortage of shingleback skinks in their area. And I mean,
sure.
evolutionary, they've adapted to persist, maybe for have a longevity, and they have high parental care, and their babies come out fairly large, so they're less susceptible to predation. So there's different things that put them in that category. And so in nature, their populations are really very healthy, but you don't see those healthy populations necessarily in herpetoculture. And so
Sure.
I like to see what I see in nature happening
Well,
in
I mean,
our
I think
captive care.
humans are the shingleback skinks. I mean, you're a proven male, and you understand that kids are expensive, and
Yeah.
they don't. You only make one at a time. So
Mhm.
we're kind of the same way as shingleback skinks. But the
Yep.
value that you have on a single animal that's not easy to reproduce and expensive, and it goes to how like we treat human children as like they're our pride, because we don't make 50 kids at once, and it's all
Mhm.
kind of like we love our one kid that we made, because we our reproductive strategy is to put all our eggs in one basket,
Yep.
which seems kind of crazy for a shingleback skink, because humans are smart enough to be like, road bad, not cross the road, and we don't get run over by cars quite as
Um,
easy.
yeah.
um, so
There's not 30 people dead on the side of the road, but there are plenty of,
yeah,
people that get hit by cars. But yeah, it's,
well, that's fair, that's fair.
yeah, I would say staying out of the road is definitely a benchmark for success for any animal. If you can
Well, and there's
realize
also
road bad, that's probably good.
some people will make you I see why they coined the phrase "go play in traffic." So
Yeah.
you know
Well, I think we've maybe covered some useful topics, I hope. Hopefully this has been a helpful discussion, and you got
I don't know
anything
where
to
this went. Yeah, I feel like it. I don't know.
I would
I
say, I would agree that, if you're looking to be a reptile breeder, if you're not producing reptiles, you're probably not successful. But there's, different measures of success in regards to reproduction. But overall, I think if you're producing healthy, viable offspring, in successive years over the long term, you're probably a successful breeder. So, or a successful reptile keeper in that regard.
Mhm. Well, and I think that's probably true. I think if you want to talk about reproduction as a benchmark for success, if you can reproduce something, yes, that is a benchmark for success. But why were you able to reproduce it? Because you gave it the right food, the right environment, the right lighting, the right heating. You engaged with its reproductive biology to figure out what you needed to do that. So there's all these other things that go into why an animal's able to reproduce. And I think I will just go back to Tracy because that's an easy one for me. Is I did a lot of things that just leveraged the likelihood of success. And oh, by the
Mhm.
way, I had success. So,
Yeah.
is that is their reproduction necessarily a sign of the benchmark that everything is good so far, I suppose. But I look at it more like the things that I thought through to allow them the best chance. When I talked about having them having pass throughs so that they could move to and away from each other when they wanted to and they had access to each other. Things like cycle feeding, things like not keeping them too warm, things like having two males in there so that they're kind of being kind of goaded into opportunistic breeding where it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to let this male beat me to the punch, and things
Yeah.
like that. And none of those singular things are, in my opinion, what did it. But being able to bring all of those ideas together and put them into a system and let it run, that's what helps make you successful. So I think it's a lot of the things you do around that leverage success, but ultimately a successful breeding and live babies are the fruit of that success, right?
Sure.
So yes, in a sense what you were saying is 100% correct, that successful breeding is a benchmark of success. And I think long term is the key phrase there. But I do want to just make the point that it's all those things you do back behind that to support it, which are really what make you successful. Because if you did all that other stuff shitty, you probably wouldn't, they probably wouldn't breed, and they probably wouldn't live very long.
Yeah. So reproduction is that benchmark, right? So that's what
It's a benchmark. I think we agree to that. Sure. Go ahead, Justin. You win.
All right. Well, always delightful to engage and fight about these topics. This has
Hmm.
been fun. Um, anything going on that we need to get out there? I can't think of anything. It's kind of things are slowing down with the season and getting cold and dark outside, but
Does
at least here
NPR
in the
has a
U.S.
holiday show coming up?
Oh yeah, yeah, that'll be fun. That's always a good time to listen to the holiday show. They
Hmm.
get into their airing of grievances, their
Yes.
Festivus style
Yep.
show. But yeah,
Yep.
I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun. Um,
And
they had their like or their um 10-year, was it, or 11-year, something like that. I mean, they had
hmm
their what do you call that, anniversary? I don't know what it.
anniversary.
Yeah, Eric and Owen's anniversary show. Yeah,
Their host anniversary.
pretty amazing. I mean, I'm still just in awe of how Eric and Owen have kept that show going. That's pretty
So
impressive.
has how long has
It's
Owen been married? Has he been married to Eric longer in NPR than he's been married
oh,
to his
definitely.
wife?
He's not married yet. He's still engaged,
He's
so he
not,
hasn't
right?
even been
Okay,
married
okay.
day
Oh,
one
wow.
yet. So
I wonder. Oh, I wonder
yeah,
if
he's
that's.
definitely in
I
that
won't. Yeah,
long-term committed relationship with Eric. Yeah.
that'll be so
So,
interesting once he ties the
um,
knot and that starts to roll in his life. I wonder. Wonder if Eric can
Right,
take a back
yeah.
seat. Can you take a back seat? I questions I
Oh, I'm
want
sure he
answered.
can.
Oh, I'm sure he
I
can.
think,
I know.
yeah,
I'm
uh,
just giving a
uh,
hard time. That's all. I'm
yeah,
kidding,
but it will be
Eric.
interesting. I mean, the dynamics are always, a different thing once you get married, but,
Oh yeah.
juggling
No,
that new
you
ball. I
you get
mean,
to figure all kinds of stuff out once you get married.
oh, yeah, yep, that's, he's got a fun adventure waiting for him here soon.
Mhm.
He's already
Mhm.
started, I'm sure he's got squirrels and tortoises in his home, yeah, that he probably didn't
Oh,
foresee himself
and I doubt
working
the
with.
adventure has even begun for him. So,
Yeah, exactly.
squirrels and tortoises are just the tip of the iceberg.
And no one doesn't listen, so he
No, he
won't know
doesn't.
what we're yeah,
Well,
he's
some
he
people are
won't know,
doers. Some
yep,
people are
that's right.
doers.
But, I mean, congratulations to those guys to do that so long, and,
Mhm.
just I'm looking forward to another 10 years. I think they're doing a bang up job and got a lot of different good content and podcasts out there. They've built quite the empire, so kudos,
Mhm.
guys. Some other, cool shows out there. I really enjoy the the, um the Australian. Oh man, my brain is failing me here. But
The Australian
the
Herpetological Podcast?
exactly, that's the one that
Yeah.
my brain couldn't come to the name of. I should be a little bit better prepared. Yeah, the Australian Herpetoculture podcast is another great show that I've been enjoying. Um, I need to get into the Clubrid and Clubroid show. Those guys are very bright guys, and I guess I'm not that into Clubrids right now, so I haven't really
Yeah.
but I need to give that a listen. I've heard a lot of good things about it and good stuff. But listen to those NPR podcasts out there. Check them out. Anything else, my
No,
friend?
I think your sad pitch, your sleepy late night sad pitch was
Yeah.
quite enough.
Yeah.
No,
I guess I'm going
they're
on
all
a little sleep
fantastic
as well.
podcasts. They're all
Yeah.
fantastic podcasts that people should be checking out if you're not. I excuse my host for his lackluster performance there, but they are all definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
And you
I
did
was up
great
till
there,
about
Justin.
1,
Thanks.
1:30 working on the book last night, so,
Yeah.
I hope I have a reasonable
I
excuse,
think
but
if you get that goddamn book out, people will forgive you.
okay. Let's make it happen then.
Yeah.
I'll I'll shoot for that. I guess I'll actually put it out there. Alright, um,
Are
Chuck,
we do we have any other shows that we wanna mention coming up, or are we are
I
we
don't
set
know.
to talk about anything?
I think let's let them fall where they may for now.
Okay.
We've
Alright.
got
Well,
some good ones planned, and hopefully they'll be up sooner than later, and we'll get some going. But we've got a few irons in the fire, so to
but
speak.
for now,
If
you get nothing.
if you
No
if
soup
you
for
want to
you.
come on the show, you've got the fighting spirit. Drop us a line or get in contact and come with a good idea, and we'll try to get you on. But this has been another edition of Reptile Fight Club, and we will see you next week.
Justin and his benchmarks are out.
Fight Club.